Hi, my name is Jay. I'm the producer and engineer for the James Altucher Show. At some point, I'm gonna start my own show at some point. All right. You can find me at Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter, or now called X. And my handle is JAY_YOW07. Or you can follow me on my website. It's jayow.com. JAYYOW.com. And you are watching and listening to Two Geeks Talking. Dan, 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 dan.
Don't give me a copyright strike now. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. And of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. I'm adding one more category for this particular interview, and it's called podcast. Go figure. Have a podcast, have a show, have an entertainment show that also is a podcast. That's what the show is all about. Our guest today is an engineer of many talents: mixing, audio, podcasting, recording engineer, and he's also the producer and writer of the James Altucher Show. We're joined by Jay, the engineer. Yeah, which is a very apt title. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good. Yeah, because I felt like I used to game a lot, so all the gamer, they have let's say Kevin Slayer or Demon Slayer or whatever. I'm like, hey, maybe I need my own nickname. And so I just picked Jay the engineer because, as you said, we are geeks,
I love it. This is your second time on the show. First time one-on-one with me on Two Geeks Talking here. We were on an amazing live stream together. And for those that haven't seen that live stream, you got to check out the channel, youtube.com/TGT Media. Jay, it's great having you on the show. I'm going to pick your brain so hard today, you're going to have to go to a psychologist because you have so much knowledge I want to dive into. It's going to be a blast chatting with you.
Oh man, it's my honor, and I have my doctor appointment tomorrow, so go for it.
For those that don't know anything about yourself as a creative person, tell us who you are and what you're bringing to Two Geeks Talking today.
My name is Jay, obviously, and in my core, I'm an audio engineer. So I'm a recording engineer, mixing engineer, anything to do with sound, mastering engineer, and then also recording for podcasts. And I'm also a gamer. So I used to love, I wouldn't say destroy computer and then put them together again, but when you were younger, you try to hey, I want to play this game, and then I want to try to break this game so I can exploit it or something like that. This is back in the 90s. And fast forward to today, I used to work in a studio as a tech. I help assemble computers, decide what equipment to buy, and then wire all the equipment together, make sure everything works well. Right, I wouldn't say write the manual, but write an input list or a manual for the studio in terms of hey, how this workflow, signal flow goes, and stuff like that. And yeah, and I just like anything tech, Apple Watch, iPhone, phone, computer, and everything else.
So what's a misconception about being an audio engineer and producer that people who don't follow you misunderstand?
A lot of people think that they have a microphone and then everything works fine. It's not necessarily the case. I know in the last chat, I shit on Blue Yeti a lot. I don't know if you remember that. And then one person in the group actually used the Blue Yeti. Then I'm like, oh, what happened is people just go for the price, right? So you see a lot of the cheap microphone. They're like, hey, $50 or $30. It's condenser microphone then, and they're like, I'm gonna pick this up, and I can be a singer or a podcaster right off the bat. That's not the case, because if you're using condenser microphone, which Blue Yeti is, what happened is that condenser microphone is very sensitive because of how it was constructed, how it was manufactured, how it was built. So if you use it in a room that's not treated, when I say not treated as in no panel and you hear echo everywhere, you're just gonna pick up unwanted noise. I'm not sure if hopefully that makes sense to you, but it pick up unwanted noise and it's just going to sound bad. So yeah, not all microphones created equally.
Looking at the role of an audio engineer, looking at the role of producer, what is misunderstood about those roles and that actual job type?
Oh yeah. Okay, I'm going to give two different categories. There's music producer, there's podcast producer. I'm not diving into movie and stuff like that because there's a whole different realm and industry. So music producer is writing music and then you download like Ableton or you download like FL Studio, and you're like, hey, I'm a producer now because I click on the screen and it makes sounds, and then I make music, and what they're so-called beats. I make beats. So there's a producer. They make music, they arrange music, they gather musicians together, and then they record. I felt like the producer in podcasting wear many hats. You could be producer just to book a guest on the show. Somehow you're a producer, even though you're just a booker. Or you're a producer if you figure out a topic like, hey, we should talk about this, and then you discuss with your host, and then you sort of write a show. You're the producer. And if you're doing marketing and social media for the show, and you're a producer. Or if you are a technical guy and you record and edit the show, somehow you consider yourself a producer. So a producer in podcasting has many different roles. I felt like the industry should just standardize the definition for producer. Producer in podcasting, I felt like should be the one that book the guests, figure out the marketing, also figure out the topics. So sort of write the show a little bit. I felt like this is the main thing for the producer. It's a bonus and optional if you can do all the technical stuff. So I felt like that should be the definition of producer for podcasting.
I think for me, it's a matter of, because I'm a solo producer, editor, host, etc., that I have all the hats, and they're just stacked up here, what I have to deal with. I think it also comes back to what are your strengths and what you can build into from your side. And that's one of my questions down in the list here is looking at skills that you've learned over the actual career, because you have a 16-year career. That's nothing to sneeze at when it comes to being an engineer of multi-talents that you are here. Let's dive into the optimization of production, though. I'm curious on this. How do you streamline your process for the James Altucher Show? Because what's that step-by-step look like for you? Because it's got to be pretty crazy.
It's not as crazy as people thought, because James Altucher Show, it's almost on the easier side in terms of the technicality, because it's a conversation podcast. It's just like Joe Rogan, conversational podcast. Back in 2019, before lockdown, it's a little bit trickier because we are doing everything in person. When we were doing in person, obviously you have the guests come on the show that sit, across from each other. You have two microphones. So my workflow then, and also back then there's no Descript, there's no Riverside, there's no Squadcast. So everything is sort of kind of primitive. So you figure as it go. Back then, my workflow is I have two microphones go into my audio interface, and then the audio interface go into the DAW. Then I was using Pro Tools. I'm still using Pro Tools right now. So in the Pro Tools itself, I split the Pro Tools files into sort of, I would call it a stereo track, a left-right stereo track. So I will have James on the left side and then the guest on the right side. The reason why I do this is because we were thinking, hey, we are shooting video as well. If I send him multiple tracks, he have to sync it up, and then he have to go through all, like the whole, let's say, an hour to sort of cut between two different guests, right? So if I send him a left-right channel, that if guest is on one side and my host is on one side, when he bring it into, let's say, Premiere Pro, he can look at the waveform like, hey, on the left side, between this time and this time, there's like a blank space over there. So I know, and that part of the blank space is the guest talking. So he can immediately, without listening to the show, he can go in and quickly cut out all the silence part, switch between camera. Then he can work, his way into like cutting different stuff out. I just want to mention that's back when we were doing in person. But now we're doing everything remote now. We just record into Squadcast, put it in Descript, and then Descript has a function called auto camera, so we just use it to auto cut the camera, and then I still bring it to Pro Tools after that to do my mixing.
Are you using like two audio or two video tracks, like separate cameras, and it's being cut all together, or?
Yep, yeah, it is two different camera, because Squadcast, right? Squadcast record locally. When we're doing Squadcast, we record James as an audio separate files, and then the guest is a separate files. So you bring it to Descript, and then you can do the auto camera cut.
And that works for video as well as audio, right?
Oh yeah. So what I assume happened is they'll just look at the audio files, just like how I did it before, when we were in person. They look at the audio file, see who is talking, and then make sure the person that's talking is at the top of the layer. And then when the other person is talking, then they switch layer to the guest be at the top of the layer.
So I'm still doing things right then. It works out well.
Yeah, because that's like the easiest way, even though it's weird in a sense that some people, they publish audio differently than the video. They publish video to, let's say, YouTube and Spotify, but they publish the audio to Apple Podcasts and everything else. So I'm sure you know this as well. Like, it's different editing audio and video.
Yeah.
So editing video, you have a little bit more leeway to have filler words, because if you cut those filler words, you see a lot of like a weird jump between sentence and sentence. In audio, you can cut all the filler words and you still sounds good, and people are not going to look at things like, hey, this has a weird jump or whatever. So sometimes if I know a show is going to release both version differently, what I generally do, I will copy and duplicate the compositions and then edit the audio and video differently.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I'm really tight on my edits because I'm recording video. I'm doing the show for the visual, but I'm also, while I'm editing, I'm doing it for the audio side of things. So I'm really tight on my edits, where I'm like cutting all the filler words. And so when you look at an interview that's pretty tightly edited, the heads are jumping around a lot. Only because that's just the way I'm editing. If I had B-roll, I'd be throwing that in, no problem. But that's just an extra hour or two I don't want to deal with. So.
Yeah, having B-rolls that's why it's kind of weird that like video editor can charge so much, because I understand it, because like they have to spend like extra 2 to 3 hours just to find B-roll. Which I didn't really want to deal with. So I just use jump cut sometimes, yeah.
We're diving into the real tech side of things here. For those that are watching or listening to this, we're going to be like, get to the good stuff. What's going on? No, this is all very good information to have. You should be paying attention if you have a podcast. Just saying here.
Yeah. And also I felt like it's fine if you ask all the tech stuff, because ultimately this is what you're interested in. And I think last time I mentioned this before, audience is like, if they sense that you're really loving what you're talking about, yeah, they will be into it as well, because you're engaging, you're happy about it and you're enthusiastic about it.
Oh, for sure. And we've both been doing this type of profession for like 16 plus years. Like it's amazing how much we dive into. I grew up with computers. I grew up, back with the Commodore 64, and I went all the way up the PC side of things and built my own. And you learn a lot from getting that hands-on experience. And I think especially as a producer and as an editor and an engineer that you are, that hands-on experience is truly valuable, because you learn 4 different ways to solve the same problem.
Yeah, it's so strange. And when I in school as well, like I tried to learn just by reading stuff. Like I still read manual. I still enjoy reading manual. Like, hey, what are the different way to use a certain equipment? But I just plug it in and then start, turning knobs or hitting buttons. And then while I'm looking at manual, I learned that way so much better than just like reading stuff.
Speaking of that hands-on experience here, if you had to teach someone the fundamentals of audio engineering for podcasting in under 10 minutes, what would you focus on?
Oh, I feel like this. Everyone should know this. Everyone that's in tech should know this. I will focus on signal flow. I feel like a lot of people doesn't really understand signal flow. So when things goes wrong, they don't really know how to troubleshoot. So what signal flow is? So the moment I speak, the audio, my mouth or my body resonate and create this sound wave. It get picked up by a microphone, by the capsule of the microphone, and then the capsule of the microphone generate voltages, and then the voltages will go through the XLR cable, XLR cable, into the audio interface, and then the audio interface gonna translate the voltage into 1 and 0, and then come out from the audio interface through either USB or whatever means is necessary or whatever connectivity, the 1 and 0 get transmit into the computer, and then the computer get the 1 and 0 back and decode it, and either turn it back into 1 and 0 to, like, let's say Pro Tools or Squadcast or whatever. And then there's another flow which is from the computer. Let's say you're talking to me. The way I hear you is the computer will get your 1 and 0 decoded or encoded, decoded into voltages, voltages, and then coming back out from the cable into my headphones. So people need to understand the signal flow. That is the signal flow with the audio interface. And then there's another signal flow with just a USB microphone. So essentially what happened is it's kind of similar. It just minus the USB cable. The USB mic pick up the sound wave from my mouth and then convert it into voltage. But in the mic itself, there's something called A to D converter, which is analog to digital converter. What happened is on that converter, or like a compact audio interface, it converts the voltage to 1 and 0, and then transmit the 1 and 0 through USB microphone into your computer, and then your computer, send it to either Squadcast or Pro Tools or GarageBand or everything else. That's how you record the audio. So the reason why I say signal flow is very important is because every time when things goes wrong, people don't really know where to start or troubleshoot, right? So they're like, hey, my audio interface is not picking up anything. So then you have to troubleshoot anything before the audio interface. Or you say like, hey, I can see the signal or LEDs going up and down in my audio interface, but I can't hear it in the computer. Then you have to troubleshoot past the audio interface. So knowing the signal flow lets you know how to troubleshoot from which side or which stage of the signal flow. Hopefully that makes sense.
To me, it does. To everyone else, you just got a crash on how to be an audio engineer for podcasting. There you go.
There's the basic of audio engineering, just knowing where the sound come from and where the sounds get convert and where the conversion and the data goes into in your computer. That's very important, and I think that's the essential and fundamental of any tech producer or producer. Just knowing the signal flow.
Go to jyao.com for scheduling your classes. There you go. So do you have like one piece of audio equipment or software you just can't live without, and why?
I have a lot of piece of audio equipment that I can't live without because I just collect stuff. At some point you just start collecting everything. But I would say if I'm an audio engineer, if I get thrown like, hey, you have to fly, you can only bring one thing with you, it's definitely the headphones. Because let's say if you're doing remote recording, you're editing, the worst thing you can have is, let's say you have me on and I have no headphones on, then you can hear yourself. Or there's something called crosstalk or echo cancellations. What happened is when we crosstalk, we were trying to argue or debate on something. When we crosstalk, the computer would decide who to duck, so you can't really hear me, or my signal will get pulled back, or my signal will just gone when you're talking. So that's like the worst thing can ever happen when you're doing a podcast.
The good thing about this setup is it records your audio on a separate track, so I don't have to worry about it, and I can shut myself up whenever I talk over you, so it works out.
It's weird because I don't know if you realize this, in Zoom there's something called, I think it's something called duplex mode or full duplex. So half duplex or something, it's something like that. I learned it like a long time ago and I forgot what the term is. So half duplex, even though we are on different tracks because of the bandwidth. So let's say we are talking, and even though you are talking at the same time, the second track will still get dug. I'm not sure if you have come across those problems before, because it's essentially because of the limitation of the bandwidth. That's why Zoom is reliable, because it doesn't require a lot of bandwidth, but the limitation is the quality of Zoom might not be as good as a Squadcast or Riverside.
The way I got around that is with XSplit. broadcaster specifically because I'm recording locally and it's also separating the audio tracks specifically. So that's why I have control. So I've had a very hard time finding other software that can do exactly this to the same quality of this as well too. So when I bring this into DaVinci Resolve, now I'm working with the DaVinci Resolve layout because I don't have Pro Tools. I'm working with the audio side of things just in DaVinci Resolve specifically, and that allows me to fix and edit and clean as I go.
Yeah, well, DaVinci Resolve is pretty good, right? I think DaVinci Resolve is going head to head or toe to toe with Premiere Pro, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's when people are like, hey, what are you editing your video on? It's either Premiere Pro or DaVinci Resolve. I hardly see anyone using Final Cut anymore.
No, not since the Final Cut X or whatever decided to cut out everything.
Yeah, Final Cut 7 was like the legacy. Like Final Cut 7 is like the last good one of Final Cut. And then Final Cut X is just like, it just like CapCut though.
It's pretty bad when you can put CapCut and Final Cut X in the same sentence, That's horrible.
It is. It is what it is. I mean, you still have to pay $200 for it. I don't know if it's worth it. I think people still buy it because like I can work it on my MacBook or my Mac, But hey, pay a little bit. You can use Premiere Pro, and then you can use some stock footage in Premiere Pro as well. I think you can you use stock footages in DaVinci? Does it come with stock footages?
It doesn't come with stock footages, but
good.
any video footage you can import. I mean, there's sites out there you can find stock footage. It's not like it's difficult. Plexels for me has been a great source of that stuff, etc. for bringing in B-roll for the short stuff. But I mean, DaVinci Resolve from a TV film perspective is still an industry standard from if I want to get a job, in like Toronto or something like that for video editing. Premiere as well is kind of getting up there. So that side of things is rather interesting.
Yeah, unless you're like very new to the industry, you're like, hey, I don't want to spend any money. Oh, I want to spend a little bit of money, but at the same time, I want to ensure that it's capable or it's compatible with my Mac, and they just like go for Final Cut. Or I want to work on my iPad, then they will go for Final Cut.
Well, no, Mac DaVinci Resolve works for Mac and PC. So does I'm not sure about Adobe, but yeah, but DaVinci Resolve is free.
Yeah, I think Adobe does too. I think it is. I use Premiere Pro on my Mac, but somehow people like editing on the iPad, and you can only edit on the iPad with Final Cut Pro. So I don't know why. So
there's some strange people out there. Go figure.
I know they're very strange.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, so I have a PC and I have a Mac, and I bring a Mac Mini is my workstation when I'm on site somewhere. So that's what I bring to TV and film sets, and it's just a lot easier. It's just a monitor, the Mac Mini, keyboard, mouse. That's all I need, and a couple of hard drives, and I'm set pretty much to do whatever I need.
Was it the M4 or was it the older one, like M2?
The M2, yeah. I got that, and then 6 months later they announced the M4. And I'm just like, I'm not spending another $2,400 or whatever it is to get it.
I have a friend just got an M4 Mac Mini, and then I would say a week later they just announced the M4 Mac Studio. I'm like, oh, I feel bad for that guy. I mean, it is good. I felt like it's about the same price as the maxed out Mac Mini, but but I think it's only M4 Max. I don't think they have M4 Pro.
Like my friend Walter, who I've worked with for a number of years, he's a Mac guy. He shows me a shot of the M4, and I'm just like, great, there's your new computer. He goes, oh no, I'm waiting for the Mac Tower coming out hopefully in 6 months or whatever.
Oh yeah, the Mac Pro? Yeah, that's gonna be really expensive.
But this is what happens when you get two tech heads talking together, enjoying what they love doing and sharing their knowledge. And I think that's the fun part. So when did you know you were a geek?
Oh, very early on. When I would say when I was 8 years old, when my dad brought back our first ever gaming console, the Super Nintendo.
Oh, okay.
I think it's a Super Nintendo. And then I'm like, this is great. I love playing games. And then sometimes my dad would bring back some toys, and then I'm like, I want to see how this works. So I just take it apart. Not too much though, because I don't want to get into trouble, so I take it apart and then quickly put it back. And then I think when the first computer that we got when I was like, I would say 15 or 16. Yeah, because I grew up in Malaysia.
Mm.
Technology doesn't come to Malaysia that quick. It'll be always like 5 or 6 years lagging behind. And then I'm like, this is great. I get to play some games, and games are expensive then. I'm like, oh, maybe I should find other ways, wink, wink, to play games. So I just started like tinkering around, finding ways to play some games, and then ultimately I joined some drama club. They're like, hey, we need to edit some sound effects for our drama clubs and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, let me do it and see if I can find a way to do it. And then I'm like, and then I really enjoyed it. And then I like to play some music as well. I'm like, maybe I could do this. So that's how I know, like, hey, at age 15, I'm like, maybe I just want to be an engineer. I don't have the face to be a superstar or voice to be a superstar, but maybe I can be someone behind the scene and manipulate a lot of different things.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. It's
No,
okay. Just pay attention to the actors in front.
yeah, and then we control whatever whether they have a smooth. I wouldn't say we control. We always want to ensure they have a smooth experience performing, but at the same time, if they like say something that we don't like, we can be like, oh, oops, finger slips. No, I never done that. I've never done that. But we have the ability to, but I've never done that.
That's what I do in editing. It's a lot easier.
Editing is weird though, because editing then you sort of at the mercy of the pre-productions or the production. So when you do editing and people send you like horrible quality audio or video, you just like, this is what I have to work with. And then you have to find a way to fix it. And sometimes it's so much harder and so much more expensive and spend way too much time just to fix stuff that it's not gonna sound good.
Look, if you don't have good audio, it doesn't matter what your video picture quality looks like. It still sounds awful.
Yeah, it sounds very awful.
What's one time-saving or productivity hack you've developed that has streamlined your process and has had the biggest impact on your workflow as a producer?
As a producer for podcasts, it's definitely Descript. I know Riverside is coming out with something similar. Descript just able to, podcast sometimes, that podcaster and host, just like you and me, we like to talk. We go off tangents, we talk too much. A show will be like, hey, we're just gonna spend half an hour talking about some stuff. It ended up 3 hours. And then you don't want to listen to 3 hours worth of stuff, because even though you speed it up, sometimes it's hard to edit. You have to listen a couple times, the same sentence a couple times, same phrase a couple times. So I think these scripts revolutionize how people edit. I think Premiere Pro is catching up, Riverside is catching up. So what Descript does is it would take the piece of audio or multiple track or however many track, it would transcribe it and then bring it into Descript and transcribe it. And then what happened is it would give you, transcriptions. And then when you edit your transcript, just like you edit a Word document, you edit the WAV file as well. So rather than spending 3 hours listening to the episodes, I can just read. I can just look at what they're saying, and then if I miss something, I can immediately go back to where I want to, because I can just read and I can just cut it out rather than like play it, listen to it, make sure I selected the right waveform and cut it. So this script really changed the way I produce podcasts and edit podcasts, and especially with the multicam update, I would say for at least 3 years ago. Just have the camera immediately automatically switching between itself. That really changed my workflow. And also they also implement AI into it. They call it the Underlord. You can write the show notes using their AI. You can say, hey, pick out some good clips, rate the clips, and then you can look at the clips and then be like, I want this clip and I want that clip. So this script really changed the way I produce podcasts. In terms of music and stuff, I think Pro Tools is still like the go-to. I don't think there's anything new that I'd be like, hey, This is amazing, and I can't live without it because I mix music. I mix the files and stuff like that.
I have been looking at Descript for a while. I was on a few AI like TED Talks or whatever a while back, just kind of understanding how AI is. Descript seems to be that amazing tool that just kind of streamlines your overall productivity, and I'm glad to see that it's worked well for you. And I definitely want to dip my toes into it for this show, and if I can do that with what I've produced, then awesome, great. Then I'll give it a go.
Yeah, I think one thing with Descript though, I really wish that would actually fix some of their bugs. I think they focus too much on new features than making sure it's compatible and stable. But it's like all startup, everything is just that way.
It'll get to a point where it'll be $300 a year or whatever the case may be, and everyone will still purchase it. It's that
Exactly.
tool because they need it. Speaking of AI, I know we talked about it on the live stream, but I'm sure you have other tools that you didn't quite get to talk about when it came to AI because there's so many out there. How do you see and use AI tools like Descript and editing and voice cloning and things like that, if you use those types of tools, impacting the future of podcast production?
I rarely use voice cloning. I only use voice cloning if I know it's like a very important script and I can get a hold of James, which is the host of the show, be like, hey, can we retake this couple lines? I would use it very minimally. I wouldn't use it to generate a whole sentence. I would use it to generate a word because voice synthesizer is great. You can clone your voice, and a lot of people has used it. The only issue is it still doesn't capture the emotions quite as well, or expression quite as well. Unless you try to micro it a lot, like, hey, this word has to feel angry, emphasize this word, that word has to feel sad in one single sentence. So it's gonna take way more time to create a very realistic voice. However, on the music side, I know this is kind of weird. I wrote music sometimes. The last tracks I produced, which I'm gonna release soon, I didn't really like how the singer sounds. I'm like, I'm just gonna use the AI. I think it's called lalas.com or something like that. I just upload her voice and be like, hey, they give you like multiple options. I just chose Ariana Grande. Even though, even though everyone sounds like Ariana Grande now. So I just chose Ariana Grande voice, but I didn't use it fully. So what happened is I blended with my singers. So it's almost sound like the backup singers, but I blend it in a way that it sounds like a double. So, and then I'm like, hey, this sounds great. It gives something that my singer lacked of. So that part is great. So I wouldn't say AI would take over the whole industry, but AI is definitely your friends. Right now, AI is still very new. You'll need to learn how to use AI to assist your workflow and assist your productions because that if you don't do that, you're either gonna spend way too much time, too much effort on one thing, or some other people will just overtake you in terms of like they produce more content using AI, if that makes sense.
It's a new tool. We have to learn how to use it because we'll be left in the dust. I completely understand that for sure. Is there any specific tools that you're excited about or wary of, I should say, when it comes to AI?
I wouldn't say worry off because I don't know. Let me ask you this before I answer that. Were you ever afraid of any new technology that comes out in the past 20, 30 years? Was there any piece of technology you're like, okay, this thing came out, we're gonna be doomed and we can't live past 10 years?
No, because for me, I was right into computers. So I was really into the tech industry pretty early on, especially from internet was getting into the T1 side of speed of internet. So I was really onto that level of things. I was getting to the transition from larger tape drive backups to smaller tape drives and that type of process. So I was more system administration side of things. So every technology advancement for me, at least, was a necessary progression in terms of learning and understanding the IT industry. So there wasn't anything I was really afraid of.
So I would say we are both technology optimists. We're not technology permissive or whatever it's called. So yes, I think everyone should embrace new technology, and I think new innovations and technology is only be good for society and human in general, and also, your workflow. It's just like when they invented car or when they invented the internet, they're like, oh no, the post office is gonna go out of business, and no one's gonna send mail again. Now I think we are more excited to receive a actual snail mail compared to receive an email. You get a snail mail, you're like, yay, someone wrote me the letter, you know. But to answer your questions, I don't think there's any technology that I'm worried about or wary of. But what I'm really excited about is the advancement of AI audio cleanup, right? So Adobe have done this. Adobe Podcast Enhance is doing this. Descript is doing this with the studio sound. There are a lot of other manufacturer or company out there doing it. Is one of which I use almost on every podcast is called DX Revive by I believe Ascentize. DX Revive. I just put it in and I just push one or two knobs, select the mode that I want. It sounds perfect. And then it sounds very natural too. So the combinations of DX Revive and maybe a noise reduction too, or noise room reduction too, that's my perfect go-to. So yeah, I'm more excited about that than any other tool. So it's something that just help you writing faster and something to help you fix audio issues faster.
Oh, that's good. So I like these types of conversations because I'm learning something new because I'd never heard of those particular tools. So this is great. Like now this is
Oh,
going to be something I want
thank
to
you.
check into and learn about and see if it can help my process as well. So
Thank you.
we pick up little things along the way. I think that's really amazing. Here's something I'm curious about as well too, especially from the listener's experience, especially because you've been so in tune with audio and podcasting for as long as you have here. What's one trend in podcasting, whether in content, format, or technology, that you think is underrated but could revolutionize the medium?
Underrated, huh? Can I say something that's overrated first? Then I would think about underrated. Overrated thing is everyone wants to sound like a radio host. Yeah, I don't know if you heard a lot of the podcasts, you just heard a ton of big bass and then very, very compressed signal. It's like everything is in your face. It's like the host is in your face. I can't stand the audio quality anymore. The reason why it was that way back then because it was FM. So FM can only carry a very small or very limited amount of frequency and bandwidth. So they have to make sure they can squash as much frequency as possible, as much information as possible into that one wave that can carry the FM wave to, reach your speakers. Back then, there's nothing called bass boost, right? Back then, the speakers all like sound like crap. They sound like they have no bass. So what happened is they have to crank up the bass more so they can hear the bass on their speakers. And nowadays, everything is bass boost. Go into a car, boost the bass, put on the AirPod, boost the bass, go on to Spotify, boost the bass. So you don't really need to do that anymore. You don't really have to sound in your face as how it is before. What I think is underrated is the dynamic. Everyone here, including me and you, on the podcast, we are telling a story. So when we're telling a story, we need dynamic. Your volume doesn't just stay the same. So you need some fluctuations in your volume. So the dynamics, which I think more people should realize it. Yes, you have to sort of control your dynamic as well. You can't be too soft and no one can hear it, or you can't be too loud and everything just crank up and blast your ear. So you have to sort of manage it. But having dynamic, you sort of grab other people's attentions because when I start speaking softer, you'll be like, oh shit, what's going on? Also, more people need to use pauses. I know I rarely pause. More people will use pauses. I think I don't remember what article that I read somewhere that like pauses are the best way to grab attention. So let's say you were younger and you were in a classroom, right? Like second grade or whatever. Your teacher is giving a lessons and then everyone was chatting and talking. All of a sudden when your teacher stop talking and be silent, and then you can hear the room sort of just become quieter and quieter and just silence, and everyone just look at the teacher. Utilizing the pauses, the silence, and the dynamic can really help you create like a more robust or more interesting or attention-grabbing podcast.
During our live stream, Isolde Trachtenberg said the same thing, embrace the pause. And I think that was a great point that she had about that, because as much as we want to fill in the gaps and fill in the space and fill in the silence is a very good way to even recollect your thoughts in a quick moment. It's always fun to see.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great way to think about it. And also some filler words, I know I have tons of filler words, but some filler words you still want it to be in there because when you in an audio medium, you can't see people's faces. You can't see that they are thinking. You can see that they are hesitating. So having some of those filler words like you can sort of signal to this listener like, hey, he's thinking, he's hesitating with these questions. That's my 2 cents. That's like my thing that like it's underrated,
I hate filler words only just because I just want, here's my question, here's the answer, straight into the point. I don't want to waste your time, because the valuable information of the guest is really the focus of the interview itself. So that's just my style of editing.
I guess everyone has different style, I would say, or different way to do a podcast. That's why podcast is great. There's no one format that everyone need to follow. Everyone can create their own style and own format,
What's the most effective way for podcasters to monetize their shows without compromising the listener experience?
Ooh, this is tough because monetization is always, always tough. You could sell your soul to get money, or you can be like, you try, or you can be like, I don't want to do any monetizations because I have dignity and I stand above all, and I just want my listener to enjoy the content. I think there's some good middle ground right there. But this is what I'm trying to do with James' show as well. It's always good. You know how like every time you go on someone's show, sometimes you will hear all the ads first before the intro. Sometimes it's better if you put the ads after the intro. So like you establish a relationship with the host first, and then the ads comes. So sometimes it's better that way. Talk about monetizations. I think some of the best way that I've heard is obviously newsletter. Having a newsletter is great, because you're not just monetization your newsletter and your show, you also have the contact of your listener or whoever they subscribe to your newsletter. You have that contact and you build a relationship. So let's say next year you're like, I want to start a new show. You already have someone or your subscribers that you already established all the relationship that you can push to before monetize. And my boss always say this, like, give out everything for free first. Do everything for free. Give out as much value as possible before you ask for a dime, so that people will trust you. And then when you try to like put ads and try to sell something or try to push a sponsorship, people are like, okay, I trust him. What's wrong for having, just one, a little bit of income from all the value that he has provided to me? So yeah, that's just how I see it with monetizations.
It's also difficult because doing this show for 16 years, you're giving it away for free. You're doing free interviews. You're doing everything for free, and you're building that connection, sure, but you don't understand sometimes, are you actually reaching the people you want to reach, or are you really providing value, because you're usually in a bubble? And I think it's difficult to figure out your style of show first off, and like a one-on-one interview style show, it's easy to do the talking, it's easy to do the interviewing after 16 years. But in my first 2 years, it was difficult.
Yeah, and also like this, I mean, like podcasting has come so far. Now, if you go into a show and you don't hear any ads, you'd be like, okay, that show maybe it's not as good. That's why they don't have any ads. So like having ads is almost like a signaling, like, hey, we made it. We made it. That's why people want to buy our show. It's like a weird thing.
So you finally have made it after all your trials and tribulations. You've made it now that you're sponsored or whatever. I mean,
Yeah,
it's great and all, but I think your
it
services are
is. It's like
sometimes better. Sorry.
oh no, I was just saying like yeah, it's like a weird thing now. Like it used to be like, hey, you have ads, you're selling your soul to the devil, to the corporate. Now it's like you don't have ads. Oh, maybe your show is not doing as well.
Look, I started in 2008 in the Wild West. I started like 6 months before Joe Rogan and Mark Maron started their own podcast. So, I'm like an OG when it comes to the show. But the reason why I haven't made it to their level is because I just like the interviews.
Yeah, and also like they love to ask like bait questions sometimes. The more you route up the emotions of anyone, the more you get followings and you get listenership. And then the more you can sell it.
Sorry, I'm too unassuming, I guess, as a host. It's a shame.
Yeah, like some people doesn't want to do it. Like I was talking to a couple podcaster out there. One of them is, have you heard of Chris Hutchin?
Sounds
I think
familiar.
he has a show called All the Hacks or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
So we're talking to him, and then he's like, "Yeah, like we don't want to do that. This is not our style. I know we can get a tons of views, we can get tons of listener, but that's just not our style." My boss said the same thing. I'm like, "Hey, for this topic, if you can ask this question, talk about this, we can get a lot more listener, and I can clip it." And then he's like, "Yeah, I know, it's just not my style." And then so we ended up not doing that.
If you get into a rhythm and you get into a flow of asking questions and having a conversation, I think it takes away from, I think, from the mental headspace of asking the questions and being engaged with the guest itself. You kind of lose that ingenuity factor of asking questions, I guess.
Yeah. I think you're totally right because you just think about the questions. You're not like listening and trying to respond to whatever that people are saying.
We'll do technical nightmares just because I'm sure you might have a story or two about that.
Yes.
What's the most challenging technical issue you've had to face during a recorded or live session, and how did you troubleshoot it in real time?
Oh, isn't it great when your host or whoever that you produce it's, let's say, in another state, all of a sudden their camera and their microphone is not working? That's like the best day ever because you have to call them, you have to like, hey, walk them through everything. I think that's like the best day of my life. It's like, oh shit, none of your stuff is working. So what am I gonna do? Because you don't know anything about camera, you don't know anything about the microphone. I just have to describe different piece of equipment by color and by shape. So yeah, that is like the hardest because anything in person is easy. Let's say if anything goes wrong, the microphone goes wrong, microphone like doesn't work, you're like, hey, I'm just gonna swap out the microphone. Make sure you have extra microphone in case. Or like, hey, computer's not working. What am I gonna do? Just get a new computer or try to find or record onto a laptop. So anything in person is easy. And then if you're troubleshooting anything in person, at least your host is there to entertain the guest, right? But if you're doing remote, if the host can't talk or the mic is not working, you're like, crap, I have to entertain the host. Sorry, I have to troubleshoot with the host and I have to entertain the guest. So like that's like the hardest thing to do. But in time, like I said, if you understand the workflow, the signal flow, you can troubleshoot very, very, very quickly.
It's almost like you have to use that Scribe website or whatever and take photos and start like laying out, if this, then this. So you're basically programming your host and or guest to fix their own problems. Welcome to IT.
It's funny. I used to do that in my studio. Not my studio, like the studio that I work as a tech for and an engineer and an assistant for. So like I wear multiple hat. I'm like, hey, if this patch bay doesn't work, click this. If this doesn't work, click this. If you want to patch this to that to work, use this and this. Yeah, and you'll be surprised. Like there are some engineers out there still can't really grasp the idea of basic signal flow because they learn everything from YouTube. They learn everything from like they self-taught. Sometimes they miss like the most fundamental skill or knowledge of being an audio engineer.
Everyone has one person that
Yes.
inspired them on their path to where they are today. Who was that for you?
Myself? No, no, I'm just joking. uh, who inspired me to be on my path? I don't know. Right now, I'm just looking up to my boss because, he's working on a lot of things and then he has that energy going. And every mentor that I have worked with, like one of my mentor, Ryan Kelly, he's my good friend and my mentor. I inspired to be like him as well because, like, he just work all day, all the time. I'm like, hey, maybe I want to be like him. Any fictional or like people that I don't know that I want to I get inspired by. I don't know if I have any. It's weird. I know it's this supposed to be like inspired moment or inspirations moment, but I just didn't have any. Maybe I should find one.
From a professional standpoint, you have been in the industry for over 16 years. You're an amazing producer for the James Altucher Show and your own work as well too. So, from a professional standpoint, you are successful. Do you consider yourself personally successful?
It's weird. I think about this all the time. How do you define success? Do you define with money? Do you define by numbers? Do you define by happiness? So I think I'm successful in terms of like I'm okay at where I am right now. I don't have to like worry about tomorrow. I have no money or I have no security guarantee. In terms of that, I'm successful. But if you're like, have I achieved my dream or what I set out to be? Not yet, but I'm on the way there. So let's say I'm partly successful. Because if you think that you are already successful right now, then you're satisfied with what you are or where you are right now. And I strive to improve myself almost every day. I want to be the best version of myself every day. So I'm still strive to be the success level, even though I'm already successful at some other level. So yeah, I would say I'm partly successful.
The reverse of success is failure. How do you deal with your failures?
I just cry about it. Well, yeah, it's funny because I think we have this guy named Hal Elrod on. He wrote a book called The Morning Gratitude or something like that. So he say, you know how people like, hey, when you fail, just keep at it, keep at it. Feelings suck, and it brings on a lot of emotion when you fail, especially if something that you love. So the advice he gave is just give yourself 5 minutes. Just put the timer on for 5 minutes, and then you can yell, you can curse, you can cry, you can do whatever you want. And then after the 5 minutes, you're like, okay, what's next? So I think I carry that with me all the time. And I think Tom Hanks said this before, or someone else said this before on another show, this too shall pass. So if you fail, just cry about it, definitely cry about it, rant about it, complain about it, whine about it. Then you'll be like, okay, what's next?
Nice. The younger generation is looking at your work and they're becoming inspired to be creative in their own way. And the fact that you may inspire the generation to become an engineer in podcasting and every other thing that you've done, maybe you're inspiring them on that path with your amazing work. How can they inspire the generation that follows them?
I don't know. If you do what you're passionate about and if you do what you love, as long as you keep doing what you love and passionate about, I feel like you'll inspire people no matter what. It's not about what you do or what you say and how you educate the next generations. They're looking at you of who you are and what you're doing. So if you're loving what you're doing, I felt like you would inspire people no matter what. And sometimes inspirations come for like the most unexpected places too.
Nice. All right, I know we have to wrap up,
Yes.
so I'm just going to dive into the final outro, which is this. I want to thank you so much, Jay, for coming on the show. It's been a wonderful pleasure speaking with you. You got to come back on so I can go through the other 15 questions
Yes.
I missed.
I love to come back on again. Maybe next time you have the 15 question plus another 20 questions,
Yeah, we'll go from there if we get to them. Where can we find you? How can we support you? And anything else you'd like to promote on your show?
You can, listen to the James Altucher Show. Want to get as many listeners as possible, like every other show. And you can follow me on Instagram. Probably the best place to be is Instagram. Is my handle is JAY_YOW07. Again, JAY_YOW07. It's like I'm leaving a voicemail. And yeah, and you can follow me on LinkedIn. Sometimes I will post some article about it. There are a couple articles that I have in my mind that I wanted to write. And yeah, that's it. And also go to my website, jayyow.com. I think they have like some contact list or email list on there. Like, hey, if you have any questions, ask me on there. I will answer as much as possible.
All right. Well, that ends this particular episode of Tiki's Talking. I want to thank you again for coming on the show. You can, of course, find this interview and 1,200 plus others on our website, youtube.com/TGT Media. The podcast you can find at twogeekstalking.podbean.com. That's TWO. Of course, every week I say this is everyone has a story to tell. It's up to me to bring that out. Thanks for listening and watching on Two Geeks Talking.